Okay, good. All right, welcome everybody. This is whatever we're calling this, which doesn't have a name, because we decided to get together and live stream chat about things that are really important to us in business. And why is it important to us in business? Because we want to make the best decisions that we can with what we know for right now. So your decisions are going to be different than mine, which are going to be different than Dean's. But before we jump into all of that and you get to experience it, let's introduce ourselves. Dean, please tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Dean Barta, Barta Business Group, located in Denver, Colorado, and we are a bookkeeping to fractional CFO business. And really, what we found is a lot of businesses are great at their craft, but not great at the financial back of the house. So we help guide business owners to make better business decisions, and so they can enjoy doing what they love in the business. And so that's how we do it through, financial services.
Love it. Oh, Dean, and I work in a different part of the executive side of the business, on the operations and strategy side, and at Red Direction, located in Boulder, Colorado. And by the way, even though we're close, we have yet to meet because we have only met each other during this pandemic of 2020. So with all that now said, Red Direction provides consulting and advising specifically around strategy and operations. And we need to be able to make decisions fast and change and adjust and make sure that we are ruthless about our priorities to move toward our goals every day, which means incremental achievement, which allows us to have great big leaps of movement forward. And that's what happens when we get to have the space of creativity, because we say what we don't want as much as we say what we do want, and move toward that step by step. And so you're here, you're listening to me, you're listening to Dean, and it seems like maybe then you're thinking about the decisions you have to make. Maybe then you're thinking, oh, I'm willing to learn something new today. And you're thinking, these are two cool people who didn't plan on wearing blue, but did.
Jess, we are of one mind today. So.
Exactly, right? Exactly. So with that in mind, it's the end of October and we're at the spooky season. And I know as we were talking right before we came on air, Dean was saying there was a story that he has that was incredibly scary to him. And I'm going to say, Dean, share your story.
Well, the story goes back about 10 years, and I had an opportunity to climb Devil's Tower in Wyoming. So if everyone knows where Devil's Tower is, probably from the big screen, it was first featured in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You should go if you haven't been before. So I never in my life had I thought about climbing Devil's Tower, but I was with a climber who, we were in the area. So climbed up, and with a lot of assistance with him. And I have a background in search and rescue and all that. So I felt safe, with my abilities. But the scary part wasn't the ascent. Is once you get to the top. By the way, there's no aliens up there. I checked. There was only people from Boulder. Believe it or not.
Seriously? You somehow that doesn't surprise me. Who knew?
And so the scary part was on the rappel down. Now, the top of Devil's Tower to the valley floor is approximately 1,000 feet. To where you would probably hit rocks is about 750 feet. So we were at the top, and we were going to rappel down to the first, bolting anchor. And my climbing partner is like, "Hey, do you want to go first? Do you want to rappel down first?" And I said, "Oh, no," calmly. I said no. And inside, I was like, my heart was flip-flopping and stomach churning and all this. And I didn't let on how really scared I was. And it's something else. If anybody who is listening to this is rappelled off a building or a rock wall or whatever, those first steps are intimidating. And I've done this before. So, but I don't know why in my mind 750 feet was different than 70 feet, but I'm not afraid of, falling. I'm afraid of hitting the ground, actually. So,
That's an important distinction.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but anyway, on this particular day, and
Yeah.
I'm not a person that's prone to anxiety attacks. I think it's as close as that I can come to an anxiety attack. So he rappelled down to the first spot. Then he calls up. He goes, "Okay, I'm ready. I'm on belay." And my legs are shaking. I'm having thoughts, and I used to be in search and rescue about we got to call search and rescue. I'm not going to be able to get off this, and my ego was just going nuts. Like, oh my goodness, really, we're going to have to do this. And so I really, I calmly, I walked up, double checked everything, and so I'm hooked into the rope and I start backing up. I do this, which is kind of a mistake, is I look between my legs at the 750 of open air between my legs. And I'm just like, and I just took a big breath and and with rappelling, you have to lean back into the wall, you away from the wall. So it's for a lot of people, it's counterintuitive. And so you got to really lean into it. And came off, and that was like one of the hardest steps that I've done in my life. And and made my way down. But really, when I look back on that experience, the fear was the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty, the what's going to happen. It was right about the time that I started my first business too, and so there was some correlation with that too. And so the fear of the unknown. But as soon as I stepped over and I focused on what I call the 6 feet of rock in front of me, and I saw Devil's Tower 6 feet at a time, and was in the present moment, really about 80-90% of my fear went away. And being in business, it's as much a mental challenge as it is anything else. That thinking about the future and how hey, what if this happens, what if this happens, et cetera, et cetera. And anybody who's been a business owner or wants to be a business owner has felt that before. And it took me, both in business but also on Devil's Tower, just focus on the present, focus on what I can do right now, and be there, and assess every move from that point. Because that, thinking in the future, like, hey, how am I gonna hit the ground? When am I
Right.
gonna hit the ground?
Right. Exactly.
But it was still, even telling the story, it really, I get shaky just even telling the story. And this was 10 years ago. So
Oh my
so
gosh, hang on, I have to do a quick shout out. Oh, Doug, I'm so happy you're here today. This is unusual that I do 2 live streams in 1 week, but look at that. You made it. So Doug is somebody who I am connected to, who lives in Chicago and has a great resume. So I'm excited you're here, Doug. There's the shout out. Woo! Okay.
Nice.
I think that's fantastic. Well, I'm thinking about that story, and there are so many stories that I have that we could relate to business, and the kind that you don't really want to admit to, and the kind like what you just did, where there's this fear element. So I'm going to totally take a different tack as far as the approach. Okay, so here I am. I love that you're so thoughtful and you think about everything and it's planned, and you use it to not only reflect backwards, but you also use it to look forward. And I have to say that I'm not that way. I'm always not only looking in the future, I'm looking way in the future. And so here I am one time, and I believe it was Budapest, because we were on a hill staying in a castle, and there was the river right below us. So it was the river, and then so here we were in this castle. And this is the first trip, by the way, I ever made with people that we did not know where we were going to stay. So at this time, I lived in Seattle. And so here we are. We all get on planes in our own ways, and we make our way to Europe. And then we connect in Europe, and we decide to go, and we're going to Budapest, but we don't know where we're going to stay. And that, to me, for me, as free form as I am and nomadic as I like to say I am, I want to make sure I have a pillow every night, a bed, and a roof. That's not a car, right? That's kind of important to me. I didn't know it until the time, but now I know. So here we are. We decide, oh my gosh, they have rooms. This is so great. So we're staying at this hotel. We check in, and everything in Central Europe and Europe in general is old, and they have different electricity than we do here. So I did remember all of my adapters. What I didn't think about with my roommate, Lori, neither she or I thought about, is we probably shouldn't have all of our stuff plugged in at the same time. So we had laptops and we had chargers for our phones, and then we decided to run the hairdryer. And we found ourselves in the dark. all the power was out. So sometimes it's not that we're not thinking, it's that we recognize that there's more perspective as soon as something happens. And we recognize that no matter how much perspective we thought we had, or how active we were at making sure we had the right plugs for the right things, that we could still do something that would cause a little bit of a problem. Mm-hmm. So we find ourselves there. And showing up to a place that's scary is very interesting, specifically because in that case, it was scary. It's like, well, now what do we do? Who do we tell?
Right.
Right? Do we tell? Actually, the answer was yes. It was just, who do we tell? But still, that question did cross our minds. Do we tell? I'm pretty sure they knew who it was. So that's kind of one of those things, whether you do it or not, and how you do it. And so we did. We said, we need some help. This is what happened. And they went and flipped whatever breakers or however circuitry and electricity runs and is set up, not here in the US, and we were good to go. But there was that moment of, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we were literally in the dark. And so how do you decide to move forward? Do you decide to move forward? Mm-hmm. And applying that, to business at that time, business was actually, it was one of the busier times during a downturn. So this was around 2002. So we were coming out of the dot-com bubble, and I had been able to position a company for growth even during that time. And we were very, very successful at it. But then all of a sudden this weird stuff happens. And so I was like, and in those conversations, we actually had conversations about, well, what happens if the lights went out in your business?
Oh, right.
Right. And I was thinking, oh, come on, this was just a hairdryer incident. Why would we want to do this? So like how am I going to hit the ground? And me, oh my gosh, I could end up in the dark at any time. Then what? Right? Then what?
Right.
And so there's got to be some business principles in this, Dean.
Well, I think a lot of business owners are been living it for the last 7 months.
Yeah.
If you would have asked a Red Rocks Amphitheater,
mm-hmm.
in February, by the way, your entire venue is going to be closed down for the next 7 months during that's the effect of having the lights go off.
That's right.
You're like, okay, what do we do now?
That's right.
So I think I look at times like this, and I was in the travel industry during 9/11. Is that it's an important time. I like Randall. And that's a good one. Right?
That's a good one.
because it's there's an old customer service thing. It's not about the incident. Right. It's about how you react to the incident. Mm-hmm. And so Doug, like candles, you'd be great in customer service because you're like, okay, what can I do? Right. Is the next step, rather than just being frozen in the dark. Well, we don't know what to do, or if you even said, should we admit to our mistake?
I know. And you know what? It doesn't matter how good we are. Every once in a while, that embarrassment factor comes in. Do I really want to own that just happened? And And by the way, we got to get over our embarrassment, and it's true. So what do we know now? And I think, and I'm going to pull from something you said about being present, because not only did you just say being present, I've been refocusing on meditation, which is a whole side story, amping that up a little. But in that, a quote came across my radar today from Eckhart Tolle. And this particular quote, if I were to summarize it, I will not get it correct, but I will summarize it as, when we are so in the present moment, fear cannot exist. And you like that? That was the gist of what was said. So the more present we can be, the more we are able to recognize that fear can go away, and we have created a different kind of space and what is available to us in the space that doesn't get what is, some people call it the itty bitty pity committee or something like that between our ears. And I think that's, or worry also, and being able to be in that present moment, knowing what we know now, to just decide to do something.
Well, and here's an interesting thing about worry that I'll throw out there. Isn't worry having faith in the negative?
Ooh, okay.
If you have faith, about the positive things, okay, it's faith. But if you're worrying, aren't you just visualizing the negative and empowering the negative?
Okay, so along those same lines, then I would say, yeah, because the element with which we get to make our own choices, right? And we get to then create our own reality. So whatever we focus on is what is amplified. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and another thing about worry and stress and all that is, one, it's taking you away from the present moment. Any of us from the present moment. And here's a question I throw out to anyone who might be listening: Do you think better when you're stressed out, or do you think better when you're in the present moment and make better business decisions, or just decisions in general?
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. I'll say we can still make pretty bad decisions.
Well,
anytime, but our chances increase of making a good decision, right?
Yeah.
The more so what I hear you saying, I'll say what I said differently. Sorry, I'm being a little snarky. No, I'm not sorry, but I am being a little snarky.
That's fine. Snarky's okay.
Okay. So to reflect that back is to say, everything we can do to increase our chances of success is worth doing.
Yes. But I think it's important to remember, what is a state of mind? Are we doing things out of a scarcity mentality or an abundant mentality? And let's say you're trying to sign a new client, and you're going to do whatever, move heaven and earth to do it, and maybe you sacrifice your rate or your price or whatever on your product. I mean, we've all had clients like that before.
Right.
Man, how many times have we just kicked ourselves for why did we sign? Why did we, because we weren't in, I don't think, a clear state of mind. Now, certainly the stresses of business can put a person, any of us, in the present moment, so we are thinking clearly, because there's okay, we've got to make a move, and we got to gather the data and all that and make them now. So it's not like worry or stress is going to always put you in a state of scarcity or whatever, but it can help refocus you, but it puts you back into the present moment.
Cheers to that.
Utilize it that way anyway.
Yeah, it does. Well, so we've come up with 3 principles so far. We came up with what do we know now, and be as present as possible. And the third one, I'm going to totally credit to Doug, which is, what tools do we actually have available to us?
Yeah, I like it. Generate power via bicycle. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we think about that, and these are ways that we can reduce fear, because I'm thinking about, the group of clients that I've had over the last year and a half. And in this client set, everybody has been overwhelmed by trying to do too much at once. And sometimes fear generated it. Sometimes chaos generated it. Sometimes it's like, well, I'm going to do the exact opposite of being in fear. So I'm going to just go be active, because then that's got to be better than being fearful. And what I'm recognizing in that is that there's this concept about prioritization that really, really, really comes out, that I heard in your story, that exists in my story, and that how we show up to a situation really matters. And I think that that's, I, so, oh, uh-huh. That's, yeah, I know. Pat yourself on the back. That's good. Pat yourself on the back. Great stuff. It is. And that's where I think that we have this whole concept of, do we actually really know what we want? Because the more we take on in an effort to get to where we're going, means we don't really know what we want, because it's more spaghetti on the wall kind of thing. And then on top of that, what would you add? Because it just left my head.
What comes to mind is actually, since this has been 20 plus years ago, when I was in search and rescue in the mountains in central Colorado, is, people would get lost. And that's a great example of, not having a strategy and moving forward in business. You're just out in the woods. You don't know what direction to go. So you just start choosing things and wasting energy, valuable energy, time, because let's say there's an impending storm or darkness or whatever, and they wear themselves out instead of, okay, take a breath, say, okay, where is my last point? And even like in some cases in an alpine environment, just walk downhill, and go wonder. But when you talk about prioritization, it really is, okay, look at all your choices, decide on something, and you're going from looking at multiple choices to single tasking, rather than trying to do every single one of these things, or run around the woods with no direction.
Right.
And at least choose a path, and then you go, and then you figure out the next, whether it's that 100 yards or half mile or whatever, and then you say, hey, okay, that was either a good decision, or from here, where do we go?
Right.
Because that's your new point A, is wherever you end up. So
that's the clarity, sticking to the decision. And I shouldn't say that's the clarity. Being clear is being willing to stick with a decision and try it out for a little while, and then decide how to adjust. And recognizing what's in and what's out, because I do know that shiny object syndrome does exist. I have it. I like to do 10 million things at once, not just 2 or 3. And it's even 2 or 3 can be too many sometimes. And that's something I think is really important to remember. I'm a big fan of the word ruthless in this capacity. People are like, just choose. And I'm like, be ruthless. It's not enough to know. Well, it's not enough to know where we're going. It's enough to say, this fits now, this does not fit now. This fits now, let go of that, and really be all into one, because that's actually competing priorities with extra stress, uncertainty, additional obligations, figuring out how to manage your energy to show up to all of this. I'm just tired saying that.
Well, I mean, what you're talking about, though, is commitment to that, whatever that, A1 priority is. And honestly, I'll keep interjecting that lost in the woods story. It's like, okay, I'm going to choose this path, and you can't every step like, oh, did I do the right thing? No, you're just like, okay, you've taken a breath, maybe several, and then said, okay, we're going to go this path. We're going to go the next 15 minutes. We're going to travel in this direction. Okay. And that's what your, commitment. I mean, in business, it might be 90 days. It might be, 180 days.
Right.
But you're like, okay, we're doing it. And then there's that commitment, or, that, if you gung ho, used a different term, but it was, you're highly committed to it, because that will also improve the level of success of that happening. Because if you say, oh, that's an A1 priority, but we're not going to throw the resources, whether it's people resources or money or equipment or whatever, into that, then you're really not committed to it. It's just like, well, I guess we'll do it. Eh.
Woo! Well, that's right. Yeah, exactly. I guess means that it's going to fizzle out. It could be death by 1,000 paper cuts. It could
Mhm.
just be a diffuse action. It could be something that we're thinking about pacifying the people around us instead of rallying the people to be committed
Right.
with us. And that is an interesting line there, which I think actually keeps us a lot in the dark, a lot lost in the woods. Altogether, and that's actually a scary place, and that's where knowing the numbers and the financial piece and the story that you can bring on that side, and where the strategy and the operational excellence, the way that work is done together on the other side. And now I'm specifically talking about vision, mission, values. So you got the financial piece, you have your vision, mission, values, and if you're actually living them and you actually have the data, you're 200% better off than without either one. And that's how many of us work. We show up, we might even be all in 100%, but we're missing two other key ingredients to help us create a way to decide what to commit to.
Well, and also in you probably have several stories about this, is that you is how involved are everybody who's involved with the plan committed to the plan? Because
Ooh.
upper management could say, hey, here's the plan, we're going forward.
Yep.
But if it involves frontline workers or middle management
Yep.
and they don't get it, or they're not, they didn't get an input into it
Yeah.
to say, well, hey, these frontline workers, I mean, they're the closest to the client or the product or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I keep throwing the story out there is, Undercover Boss. What is that
Oh, I
program
love that.
about?
Yes.
It's about, the founder who's become insulated, and
Mm-hmm.
what do? They go to the frontline employees or middle managers and say, okay, to re-experience what's really going on out there, getting their input is, because, as a founder or CEO, you're in a position of power to make that move. But if you're not taking the input from the people it's really going to directly affect, you can have a diverse and you probably have plenty of stories about that.
Ah, yeah. Oh man, I think I don't even know where to begin. I was trying to think everything that's coming to mind. Okay, well, there's when I was a young manager, right back, my first company, and wasn't my company anymore. We sold it, so there were four of us. We sold it to a bigger company. So now I was working for a bigger company, and I didn't know how to manage, and I had 10 people right in front of me. And then within the first year, I had more remote people other places. And then I was adding and adding and adding as I was helping acquire all these other companies in this portfolio that I managed. And I remember thinking to myself, how do I get everybody on the same page? So in my infinite wisdom at 21, I decided to manage by self-help book. And our weekly meeting, we had 2 weekly meetings for the team, and one of the weekly meetings was about a book. So I had created a book club that if everybody would read the book, we could at least have something to talk about so I could figure out what to do next. It didn't work. People humored me. I'll tell you what, everybody humored me. but
Mhm.
but it didn't help, because really what I had not done was I had not put the stake in the sand. I had not said, this is what we're committed to. Are you in? And if you're not, how do we get you there? And that, I think, is something that it's easy to overlook. And of course, that's a silly story. Well, looking back, hindsight being 2020, I was very serious about it at the time. Be real about that. But it was my goal to bring people together. And I understood the only way to make the growth goals that we had, to get to where we wanted to be together, was to actually figure out how to do it together. And so I knew what I needed, but I didn't know how to do it. So I wish my past self had me today. I'll be real.
Well, I've got a young manager story from my own past.
Oh, you do?
Because mine is probably exactly the opposite of that. Well, in that I was like, I have all the answers, and you just work until I tell you to stop.
Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
I was just like, hey, let's forge ahead, and I can forge ahead with twin bulldozers and all this other stuff, and dragging people along, and and the whole works. Incredibly uh, exhausting. And luckily, early on, was probably like about the first year or two, and it progressively got better and better as the years and decades rolled on.
Mhm.
Is I would just say, hey, what do you think is the best way to do this?
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, what? They were kind of surprised at first that I would ask that after knowing my past. And then they were like, well, okay, well, here's what I think. I said, well, let's try that then for whatever, 30 days, 90 days.
Mhm.
And many times it was just so much better an option. Or, if it wasn't, like, well, we can pivot from that, because I like the core belief of that. What we do is just make some adjustments. But I grew as a manager and leader of people because it wasn't about me dragging the team on, putting them on my back and all that. This is way too much, way too much stress when it didn't have to be that way.
Right.
Because there's a lot of, you hire well, and make sure those people, that it's a free communication for them to give input. And then they were a lot more empowered, and we moved along
Yeah.
so much faster.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing? And the biggest shifts come when we'll do that. So when you let go of needing to have all of the answers, huge shift. When I let go of the book club, huge shift. And by the way, both of those involved recognizing, do we have the right people? Am I the right person? Am I approaching this right? How committed am I? So I can ask for the commitment of somebody else. Because if I came up to you and I said to you, Dean, I'm like, well, will you come help me with this new project? How do you get committed to that? You don't have any information.
Right.
But so
Right.
many of us actually show up to our business that way. And then what do we do to compensate? We actually go the way of, well, let me get to the lowest common denominator. How can I plug anybody into this role? And that gets rid of the amazing opportunity of the people that fill that role. So I think that that's a huge, I think the people part is what we both have in common in all of our stories.
Yeah.
We make the opportunity, we reflect or not. We might find ourselves in the dark, reflect or not. We might get lost in the wilderness, reflect or not, and keep going, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And the key point is that we keep moving forward and learning from that, those experiences. And it's that incremental improvement over time. So it looks like Doug, the audio is back on for him. And you learn all this, and of course, we can look back decades and stuff like that, and the person I was, coming into the workforce 33 years ago is much different now than then, and just how I shifted and the experiences that facilitated those shifts as well. And many times it was just I got tired of doing or being the way I was, because it was way too stressful.
Right. It is. And so let's go back to that. When we prioritize, we can get commitment. When we prioritize, we can be ruthless. And when we prioritize, we can now communicate more effectively. And the business principles, because business doesn't have to be scary, even when we find ourselves there, like, how are we going to get our feet on the ground? And, oh, shoot, all the lights just went off. I plugged in one too many things into that. Great. Oh, geez. There were the three principles, and the three principles that we're walking away with today from this conversation are, well, what do we know right now? And what do we need to do to be as present as possible so that we can figure out how to get to that commitment place? And third, What tools do we have to be able to take action? So we've hit, I think, the brainy side, the heart side, the gut side, and all of those together is a great place to be and a natural conclusion for our conversation. So, Dean, as we're wrapping up here, what are your final thoughts?
I think, with those three key items that we've gleaned through this conversation, it's really how you're making it less scary.
Yeah.
Honestly, and because businesses, being a small business owner and being a small business or medium-sized business, yeah, there's plenty of scary, especially in this challenging environment. But if you can mitigate the scariness of those certain things and understand those three main important points, boy, it can really take the edge off of things at the very least.
Yes. And I think taking the edge off is probably a great first step.
Yeah.
Because I would consider that a win. I would consider that something that we get to go forward with. And then the next time we do it, we're going to have more confidence. So we get to take more of an edge off. So we get to show up in that way and build on each of those little wins, because that's experience. By the way, so is building, but we don't want to build on the failures. So I didn't want to say that. So we want to accept our failures and learn from them and build on our successes, all of which increase our confidence for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, this has been great, Dean. I love doing this with you. This is going to be super fun. And everybody listening and watching, one final shout out to Doug, because he's been talking to us in the chat. Everybody else, chat to us. We'll shout you out too. And until next time, we'll see you later.
Thanks, y'all.